Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. So this is another rewind episode going through the 2020 Tour de France. This will be stage 3. This is the, well, I guess I won't say who won, just in case. I don't know. Just in case you actually don't know, but I'm sure you do. Or you can rethink. Actually, no, maybe you've forgotten by this point, and this could be a fun, I don't know, 10-minute Jeopardy thing where I'm just going to describe something and then you can try to remember what happened this day as I describe it. That could be a fun challenge. I would actually like that if I was in the listener's position. Anyways, this was the stage. I will say this because it's in the title. This is the stage that went along the Route Napoleon. So this one, it was a slightly more boring stage, and I thought I would actually have more of these, but I really didn't, because this is one of the few where I actually start looking at landscape stuff, like the architecture or whatnot. I thought there were, usually there's more, but this is such a good tour. There wasn't many of those. But anyways, I did relate this to some sort of historical event, which is what I like to do. So this is, Napoleon was in exile, and so I was reading up on that beforehand, and because I knew Napoleon got exiled, and then he escapes from exile, and then that leads up to Waterloo, right? That's a big deal. But I did not know how unstrict his exile was. I mean, just hindsight, I guess, is 2020, but how dumb could these people have been? Oh my gosh. Anyways, you're gonna hear about it here, and there's some landscape stuff, and then it's a very good sprint. So yeah, let's jump into it. I'll talk about it at the end. The tour quietly follows in the footsteps of Napoleon. Tour de France 2020, Stage 3, Nice to Sisteron, 198 kilometers. Sprinters have their day in Sisteron. Ewan weaves like a needle. Alaphilippe retains yellow. Just over 200 years ago, Napoleon Bonaparte was at the peak of his powers. He was the Emperor of the French, King of Italy, ruler over the Iberian Peninsula, destroyer of the Holy Roman Empire, and the rest of Europe formed coalition after coalition to defeat him. For over a decade, he was the master of Europe, and in that time, he became one of the most famous people in world history. But by 1814, it all came tumbling down. In 1812, his infamous invasion of Russia failed miserably, triggering yet another coalition of European powers warring against him. At the Battle of Leipzig in the fall of 1813, Napoleon was dealt the crucial blow and was forced to retreat. By the spring of 1814, it was all over. His enemies had captured him and Paris. Peace terms were negotiated, and dear readers, let me tell you, they perplex me. In practice, he was exiled to the small island of Elba off the coast of Tuscany, but he enjoyed full autonomy to do what he wished as ruler of this little island kingdom, with highly ample pensions for himself and family. What were these rival powers thinking, not keeping him under lock and key? Because how could the once emperor be satisfied ruling an island of a few thousands, when he had once waged wars for the mastery of Europe while commanding armies of hundreds of thousands, an entire 500,000 at one point? So, majestically and romantically, he returned to Europe, breaking his exile. He smuggled himself out of Elba when Britain's eye was turned and landed back in southern France. Before his famous 100 Days, his brief but absolutely legendary return to power at the end of his final defeat at Waterloo began, he first needed to cross quietly undercover to one of his loyal armies through the new King's France. For some 10 days, he marched from Cannes to Grenoble. The route is still known. It has the finest trail markers in all of Europe. A gilded eagle perched on a Roman column, each taller than a man. The towns and their many-starred hotels where he slept each night can still be visited today. In fact, the views and the history are so rich, a scenic highway has been built during these modern times, the Route Napoleon. And it is on this highway our dear tour travels today. The opening festival in Nice is completed. It is time for the tour to live up to its name. We strike north, as Napoleon did. Napoleon had 1,100 men with him. The tour caravan is probably larger, but of comparable number. The same sights Napoleon, France's greatest general, saw, our riders and us viewers now get to see. What was Napoleon thinking as he trekked over hill and past lake between such beautiful mountain vistas? He must have thought about what grand things were in store. Did our riders think about such things today? Some, perhaps, but I would guess many of the riders lived in the moment and focused on the task at hand. GC men needed to be guarded and sprinters needed to keep their legs fresh. As stated, the tour now began to live up to its name. It was traveling from the hustle and bustle of Nice into the remote hill country. The roads and towns were quieter and more laid back. With only Jerome Cousin of Total Direct Energy never more than a few minutes up the road, the peloton had a relative day of leisure, it seemed. I could be wrong on that, dear readers, for I have not yet listened to many of the interviews, but today had all the vibes of a low-key transitional tour stage. Such days are necessary. Some days the powder needs to be kept dry so that the fireworks of the big days are truly fantastic shows. And fear not, surely a fine sprint would await us at the finish line to send us home happy. On such days we can afford dives into history, such as our Route Napoleon. We can also mention the beautiful churches in the towns and the chapels on the hilltops. The Chapelle Notre-Dame du Roc was the one that most impressed me. Dear readers, take a look at it. Scour the internet for its images amongst the landscape. The 12th century chapel is perhaps humble, but definitely beautiful. But the key is to see where it is seated. What an amazing mount it is on. They don't call it the Lady of our Rock for nothing. The sheer drop of its cliff wall is oh so impressive. It is so romantically picturesque from the town of Castellane below, Our Lady of the Rock, high above, watching over us mortals here below. But we move on, for the peloton approached the finishing town of Sisteron. Cousin was caught with 16 kilometers to go, and then the sprint teams clocked in for the business end of the stage. It had been a quiet day, and Sisteron was far quieter than in years past with COVID restrictions and the end of summer vacations. But none of that diminished all the gravitas of winning a stage of the Tour de France. NTT was on the far right working for their newly crowned European champion, Giacomo Nizzolo, in his blue stripes and golden stars jersey. Cofidis was gearing up for their sprinter Elia Viviani. The sprint trains were fighting with the GC team trains for the front, trying to protect their favorites. Thibaut Pinot's Groupama FDJ team protected him. Mikel Landa's Bahrain McLaren team was up there. At one point, Luke Rowe of Ineos Grenadiers led Egan Bernal, also of Ineos Grenadiers, at the front of the peloton. Wout van Aert of Jumbo-Visma came down in a crash with 6 kilometers to go. No sprint for him. Quick-Step, lurking, made their way towards the front. Alaphilippe was looking as fetching as ever in yellow. At 3 kilometers to go, the GC teams could back off, because now they would receive the same time if there was a crash. Quick-Step now bowled down the road on the left, Mitchelton Scott on the right. At 2.2 kilometers, there was a roundabout, and the left side proved the quicker. Team UAE came to the front, Sunweb on their left. Ladoucedal, working for Caleb Ewan, came up as well. Finally, under the 1 kilometer to go banner, La Flamme Rouge, the red flame. Sunweb was in full control with an impressive train of 3 or 4 men still intact. Surely they were working for Cees Bol on this day, after he had reached the podium on stage 1. But NTT was coming up with Nizzolo, ratcheting up the pace to ever higher speeds. Then Bora Hansgrohe's Peter Sagan, Monsieur green jersey, but not wearing green today, launched his sprint. Finally he is looking in better form, I thought. Though he looked good, he launched too early. On his right emerged the shamrock jersey with the green, white, and orange helmet. Sam Bennett of Quick-Step, champion of Ireland, had launched his sprint, his final kick. He looked good. It all seemed won. But behind, one rider was making big gains. Whizzing between all the riders to the far right on the barriers, Caleb Ewan pinched and tight-roped his way through a gap left open around Sagan. Ewan came into Bennett's slipstream, and as Bennett accelerated, a gap to the left in front of the fading Nizzolo opened for Ewan to pop through. Caleb Ewan, the Australian pocket rocket, still continued accelerating and drew even with Bennett. The line was coming fast, but Bennett knew he had topped out and Caleb hadn't. So Bennett's line took him slightly to the left in the hope that it would help stall out Ewan as well. But today, the pocket rocket was the man of the match, physically and tactically. Ewan continued to drive by Bennett like a bullet train. He won by almost a full bike length. Last year, Ewan won 3 stages and was the dominant sprinter of the 2019 Tour. Today, he has opened his account this year in Sisteron. It was a fine sprint. He was as nimble as a needle weaving through such competition. Perhaps his small stature, 5'5", 1.65 meters, is what allowed him to move like Mercury. And perhaps, were Napoleon here, he would be pleased that a rider after his own stature won that day on his route. All right, I know it was a missed opportunity that I didn't make more fun comparisons between Ewan and Napoleon, both being short. Now, to Ewan's credit, actually, to both their credit, they punched above their weight, obviously. Napoleon wasn't as short as we thought, I believe, from what I've heard. And Ewan, his size is to his advantage. He wins a lot of uphill sprints now. He's gotten good at those in the past couple of years. It's actually been really cool and exciting to look at. And obviously he gets so arrow that's like his greatest advantage, and it's because he's small. So I love his nickname, Pocket Rocket, and everything. But for some reason, to be perfectly honest, even though he has some really impressive sprints, Ewan, just for some reason, he doesn't excite me as much as the other sprinters. I don't really know why. Perhaps I'll try to explain it at some point. Now, I can say that, but obviously I still wish him the best. I wish all these guys the best, really. But yeah, for some reason, he's not as exciting as, at least a couple years ago, his big counterpart was Gaviria, and Gaviria was just, wow. At least when he was at Quick Step, he was. He was just unreal the way he won. He was like Peter Sagan, where he could just win any way possible. And now, actually, in the past couple years, Ewan's starting to expand that because he'll take some pretty gnarly uphill sprints. Like he's won the Haddam stage at the UAE Tour. I guess that was Dubai. Now it's UAE. Yeah. So, it's kind of impressive that he's starting to build more range like that. And there's even some just hilly stages at Tour Down Under that I've seen him get over recently. And it's starting to change my opinion that he's just a pure sprinter. I think that might have been why I was just not as excited about him. Maybe I'll have to get into it sometime, because he's in the same group as Marcel Kittel. Like, again, respect Kittel, impressive, wish him the best, but he was never my favorite to watch. But yeah, missed opportunity to compare Napoleon and Ewan's height throughout this. That could have been another wrinkle of kind of clever tying stuff in, but I realized it the last line because I have one reference to it at the very end there, and that's when I remembered that. And this was the first day. This was the first day of the tour where I had a full day of work, and then I had to write this preview. So yeah, I wasn't just gonna go back and change everything and add stuff in about it. That'd be way too much work on that night. Again, you gotta remember, when I was starting this was all on a whim. And this is where it really started to hit me like, man, this is what I'm in for. Holy crap. 21 days. They think riding is hard. My gosh. All right. Anyways, 5-star review on iTunes. Maybe I can try to check the other ones too. iTunes is the only one I really check, to be honest, because that's what I have. The blog itself, if you just want to read the blog post, cyclingodysseys.com. 5-star reviews. I'll start reading them out soon. I keep saying soon, but I really do mean it. I'll do it soon. Better to stock up though, like, let's be honest. And subscribe, obviously. Maybe that's what I was forgetting the past couple episodes. Subscribe, and yeah, Twitter, Cycling Odysseys. And yeah, with that, we'll probably hop back to some. No. We'll do another stage. I've been doing twos and twos. Twos and twos, I think, should get us done. Right? So, anyways, yeah. Another stage coming up. There was stage 4 was a good one too at the tour. But yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully you guys are too. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. Oh, that's the other thing. Email me. cyclingodysseys@gmail.com. Email me thoughts. Let me know how I'm doing. Questions. Requests of anything. If you want to hear about something or you want to talk about something. I don't know. Anything. I'm just open. I'm a pretty open book. So, yeah, let me know. And, yeah, with that, vive la cyclisme.